I'd like to begin our lecture on sleep and dreaming. Enjoy the honey heavy dew of slumber. That is a quote by Shakespeare in his play called Julius Caesar. Now for a very different view by Thomas Edison, sleep is a criminal waste of time. So many different views of sleep, regardless of how you feel about it. The study of sleep and dreaming is meaningful to all of us because, well, let's face it, it's something we all do. So let's start with a basic understanding of biorhythms. Circadian rhythms refer to biological rhythms that are experienced by humans and many other species. Many of your biological functions vary in predictable ways over the 24 hours of a day, such as your body temperature, your blood pressure, even your urine production changes in predictable ways over that 24-hour period of time. Also, when you get tired naturally, so natural sleep is also guided by cyclical factors, such as the lighting and your body temperature. Your body temperature usually drops significantly starting about midnight and starts increasing significantly somewhere between 6 and 8 in the morning. It can be quite difficult dealing with working rotating shifts or traveling to other time zones. Those times when we need to actually reset our biological clocks. But usually this happens on its own. So first, let's look at this natural process, resetting the biological clock. What is involved in it? It says here, it's stars, light, and melatonin. So what kicks it off is a change in lighting, right? When it gets darker outside, the retina detects that change in the light. And this sends a message to the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus, by the way, is in the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Sometimes this is just referred to as SCN. So if you see this somewhere referred to in that way, it just is referring to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. The SCN then sends a message to the pineal gland, and the pineal gland actually releases this neurochemical called melatonin. And melatonin adjusts the clock for you. Now, if you're dealing with something like a rotating shift or you're traveling to other time zones and you need to try to assist that process, there are small doses of melatonin that you can buy in a drugstore without a prescription. Now, melatonin is useful for one thing only, to help you take naps during the day. And this can be really helpful sometimes for people who are dealing with jet lag, and also sometimes when you need to take a nap to prepare you for a rotating shift at work. So it can really help you to take a nap, get tired, and take a nap during the daytime. But it doesn't help with nighttime sleeping. And the reason for that is that you already produce plenty of melatonin at nighttime. Even if you're suffering from insomnia, melatonin is not the problem. So we're going to be talking a bit about sleep labs. I've mentioned before that I've worked in a sleep lab for a while. If you are a participant in a sleep lab, for instance, one at a university, maybe through a SONA study, sleep labs are generally involved in doing research on issues related to sleep and dreaming and/or diagnosing sleep disorders. The main instrument in a sleep lab is an EEG. This is the abbreviation for electroencephalograph. And the electroencephalograph measures brain waves. It actually measures and then records your brain waves while you are sleeping. So any sleep lab is going to have an EEG. Now, they may also have some of this other equipment that we're going to talk about, but the EEG is the most crucial. So the sleep lab might also have EMGs, That's an electromyograph, and that records muscular activity, muscular tension. So the M, you can remember that as muscular, right? And the EOGs, this is the electroocularograph, and this records eye movements, so is especially interesting, of course, for recording REM sleep. And then finally we have EKGs. This is the one most of you are probably already familiar with, and that's the electrocardiograph, and that measures, of course, heart rhythms. Now, if you were a participant in a sleep lab, you would show up, sign up for your study, and show up to actually sleep overnight. And sleeping overnight, as you can imagine, sleep labs are equipped with little rooms like the one shown on the slide. And you are generally donned in an EEG cap. This is also sometimes called the sleep cap. And that is if you are lucky, because some of the sleep labs are still using what they were using when I worked in a sleep lab, that are not really up to date, or have the funding for the most up-to-date technology. And in that case, all of those individual wires that you see on the slide here in this picture, electrodes, okay, would just be pasted to your scalp. So your hair would be separated, they paste them in, okay, and long wires would come from it. And as you can imagine, you know, as you toss and turn and sleep, sometimes some of those can come loose and we would have to come in and quietly reattach them. But, you know, you'd be sleeping through the night and you would be having your brain waves measured. Now, some academic and commercial sleep labs also study and or diagnose erectile dysfunction in men. So this is very common after a certain age of men, and so could be experienced later in life by many of the students in our class or by someone that you love. And the first thing that really you need to know is the problem physical or is it psychological? Okay, if it's a physical problem, then they need to know to see a medical doctor. But if it's a psychological problem, they're going to need to see a psychologist instead. During REM sleep, and we're going to look more closely at REM sleep here in a bit, but one of the things that occurs during REM sleep on a regular basis is physical genital arousal. And in males, of course, that's an erection, but less obvious in females. Females also experience this with increased vaginal lubrication and clitoral engorgement. And REM erection in men usually outlasts REM sleep by about 30 to 45 minutes. And that is what causes the common morning erection in men. Okay, and this is very important in sleep labs in diagnosing whether it's a physical problem or a psychological problem, because you can think of the genital arousal during REM sleep as being a non-sexual arousal. In other words, it's kind of like just a check on all the equipment to make sure everything is functioning properly physically. Commercial labs commonly charge $200 to $300. Now, this was in my day, and that price has probably gone up quite a bit since then. But they charged back in my day $200 to $300 to determine if a case of erectile dysfunction was physical or psychological. There's a really inexpensive, highly effective test that I'm going to clue you in on in case you ever have this difficulty or someone you love, okay? And for the price of just a few postage stamps. So you know the postage stamps that you see on the slide that you can buy that are in a roll and they're perforated, okay? That's all you need, and only enough to go around the base of the penis and then attach. So there is an adhesive on one side, and you just attach that with liquid, right? So just enough to go around the base of the penis, and as you might have guessed, it's a physical problem. The stamps are not going to be broken apart in the morning. If it is a psychological problem, they will be. So you can get your answer here for just the cost of a few postage stamps.